You think you know werewolf romance? Think again. Forget the cheesy, predictable tropes. Tonight, the spotlight is on King Alaric Thorn, the Lycan with power so absolute the shadows obey him, and Alara Vance, the Omega servant he claims to despise, yet whose scent drives him to madness. Picture this: a dazzling feast, a sudden silence, and then a guttural sound that cuts through the music. Don't look at him again. That's the growl that changed everything. It wasn't a warning. It was a promise of destruction. What if the servant you ignore holds the key to the king's downfall? Get ready for a story of hidden identities, deadly obsession, and a twist that proves even a Lycan King can bleed. The Obsidian Court. The air in the grand hall of the Obsidian Citadel was thick with the scent of pine, spiced wine, and the mingled, potent musk of high-ranking alphas and betas from every major pack in the Northern Hemisphere. Crystal chandeliers, each one large enough to crush a man, cast dazzling, cold light upon the assembled elite. Tonight's celebration was ostensibly a tribute to the decade of peace enforced by the ruthless hand of King Alaric Thorn. But everyone knew the real purpose: to reaffirm his dominance and scout for potential political alliances or weaknesses. Alaric Thorn was not merely a king, he was a Lycan, a breed of werewolf so rare and powerful that his presence alone was a physical pressure. His shift was flawless, his control absolute, his longevity legendary. At 35, in human years, though the power radiating off him suggested centuries, he was a figure of terrifying masculine beauty, tall, with shoulders that strained the seams of his custom-tailored, obsidian-colored dinner jacket, a jawline carved from granite, and eyes, the color of molten gold, that missed nothing. He sat alone on his elevated throne, the centerpiece of the high table, a goblet of vintage blood-red wine held loosely in his powerful grip. He didn't smile. He didn't need to. The hall was filled with notable figures. To Alaric's left, Lord Caspar Vane, the beta of the formidable Iron Peak Pack, whispered conspiracies with Lady Beatrice Vance, a distant, ambitious relative of the king. Across the room, near the musician's dais, stood Captain Elias Rook, Alaric's most loyal Alpha General, his posture stiff, his eyes constantly scanning the crowd. These were the players in Alaric's meticulously controlled game. Alara Vance, the Omega and the Shadow. Against this backdrop of silver and power moved Alara Vance, an Omega servant. Her name was a cruel joke. Vance was an old, respectable Lycan surname, yet Alara herself was nothing. A low-ranking servant in the vast, unforgiving citadel. She had been brought to court 6 months ago, after her small, outlying pack was absorbed into the Obsidian territory. Alara was small, pale, and possessed the kind of quiet beauty that was easily overlooked, or purposefully ignored, by the alphas who craved vibrant, obvious mates. Her hair was a simple braid of dark brown, her dress a drab, grey shift, identical to the dozen other Omegas serving the feast. Her scent, a delicate, almost undetectable trace of cold lilac and something woodsy, was the perfect camouflage for her position. She knew her place. Head down, eyes focused on the silver tray, scent suppressed, silence absolute. Her primary duty tonight was serving the king's high table, a dangerous proximity she dreaded. Every time she approached the throne, the invisible pressure of Alaric's Lycan aura felt like a physical fist to her chest, threatening to collapse her lungs. She feared him, not just because he was king, but because of a specific, unspoken tension that had existed between them since her arrival. A tension Alaric handled by deliberate, searing scorn. As she stepped forward to pour more wine into his goblet, her fingers brushed the polished marble of the table. Alaric didn't move, but the temperature dropped. His golden eyes flicked from the crowd to her face, a look of pure, cold dismissal that was far worse than anger. "Careful, servant." His voice, a low rumble, even when spoken softly, cut through the quiet murmur of the high table. "That vintage is worth more than your entire former pack." Ilara's head dipped lower. "Forgive me, Your Majesty." She quickly retreated, her heart hammering against her ribs, the familiar, sharp sting of his disdain, a dull ache. She was insignificant. She was nothing, and that, she reminded herself, was her only defense. The catalyst, Tristan Valerius. The feast was approaching its climax, a grand display of roasted venison and exotic fruits, when the heavy mahogany doors at the end of the hall swung open without announcement. The musicians faltered, and a sudden, sharp silence fell over the court. A figure stood silhouetted against the torchlight of the antechamber. He was an alpha, undeniably, with an aura of casual arrogance that was almost as potent as Alaric's, yet utterly different. Where Alaric was obsidian and granite, this man was quicksilver and fire. This was Tristan Valerius, the crown prince of the powerful southern Crimson Moon Pack. Tristan had been absent from the court for over a year, ostensibly on a diplomatic mission that many believed was a veiled exile orchestrated by Alaric, who saw the younger alpha as a genuine threat to his unchallenged position. Tristan's gaze swept the room, pausing briefly to offer a charming, slightly insolent smile to the gasping Lady Beatrice. Then, his eyes locked onto the king. "My apologies for the delay, Your Majesty," Tristan announced, his voice carrying easily. "The roads are treacherous this time of year. I trust I'm not too late for the main course." Alaric's expression remained perfectly neutral, but Captain Rook, at the side of the dais, shifted his weight, his hand subtly moving toward the dagger strapped beneath his formal jacket. "Prince Valerius," Alaric acknowledged, his tone devoid of warmth. "Late as ever, but welcome. Perhaps a chair can be found for our unexpected guest." The fatal glance. As Tristan Valerius was escorted to a newly placed chair near the center of the hall, the buzz of conversation cautiously resumed. Ilara, however, was frozen. She had been heading back to the kitchen, her tray empty. Tristan passed within 10 feet of her. Their eyes met. It was a flicker, less than a second, an accidental collision of gazes in a crowded room. But for Ilara, who had spent 6 months mastering invisibility, and for Tristan, who was trained to observe every detail of a potential rival's court, it was enough. Tristan Valerius saw not a drab servant, but the startling clarity of her deep emerald eyes, framed by the pale severity of her face. He saw her fragility, yes, but also a hint of something shielded, an intelligence or a hidden fear. He offered her a minuscule, almost imperceptible smile, a genuine, warm acknowledgement that he saw her. Ilara's breath hitched. In all her time in the citadel, she had only received scorn or indifference. She quickly dropped her gaze, her cheeks burning, and started to hurry toward the exit, terrified of the attention. But it was too late. The air pressure in the hall became unbearable, the sudden, oppressive weight of a Lycan's true fury. The crystal chandeliers above began to sing with the vibration of uncontrolled power. Every werewolf in the room felt it, a primal, unmistakable growl that seemed to vibrate in their very bones. It was the sound of ownership challenged, of a territorial beast asserting its claim. Alaric Thorne hadn't just looked. He had smelled the subtle interaction, the minute shift in Ilara's suppressed lilac scent, the way her heat had flared under the gaze of another alpha. Alaric slammed his goblet down on the marble with a sound that cracked the silence like a gunshot. The rich wine splashed onto the polished stone, staining it crimson. His golden eyes, now dangerously narrowed, were fixed not on Tristan Valerius, who watched the king with an amused smirk, but on the small, trembling figure of Elara. His voice was a low, terrifying snarl, meant only for her, yet amplified by his Lycan rage to carry over the shocked silence. "Don't look at him again, Elara." He used her first name, a shocking familiarity, a public claim. Then his voice dropped to a barely contained, guttural rasp, his command sealing her fate. "Look only at me. If you dare to let your eyes stray to another alpha on my territory, I will have your tongue." The hall erupted in horrified murmurs. The king had exposed his hidden obsession with a single, brutal declaration. Elara stood frozen, her blood running cold, realizing her disguise had failed, and she was now the unwilling focal point of the Lycan King's deadly, unpredictable interest. The aftermath of the growl. The moment Alaric's command echoed through the hall, the atmosphere shifted from celebration to a volatile, dangerous standoff. All eyes were on Elara, the insignificant servant now thrust onto the stage of Lycan politics. She could feel the heat of 1,000 stares, curiosity from the Omegas, contempt from the Alpha women, and dangerous assessment from the men. The king's public use of her first name and the threat of severe mutilation proved two things instantly. Alaric knew exactly who she was, and her servitude was a facade for his dark, controlling fixation. Prince Tristan Valerius, sitting only a few tables away, let out a short, mocking laugh. It was a sound designed to infuriate the king. "Well, well," Tristan drawled, leaning back in his chair, seemingly unconcerned by the Lycan rage radiating across the hall. "A possessive streak, your majesty, and over an Omega. I confess, I thought your tastes ran grander." Alaric did not address Tristan. His gaze remained locked on Elara, who was struggling to maintain her composure, her eyes fixed miserably on the intricate pattern of the marble floor. "Captain Rook," Alaric commanded, his voice now dangerously calm, "escort the servant to my personal chambers. Ensure she is comfortable. And then, see that every window in the citadel is secured. I find the night air too distracting." Rook, a man whose loyalty was matched only by his efficiency, bowed stiffly. "Yes, my king." He moved swiftly toward Elara, his expression grim. As Rook took Elara's arm, his touch was surprisingly gentle, yet firm, a silent apology mixed with absolute obedience. Elara didn't look up, but she heard the murmurs intensify. She was no longer a servant. She was a trophy, a hostage, a newly acquired obsession. Tristan's voice pursued her as she was led away. "Take good care of her, Thorn. She has a certain, how shall I put it, delicacy I quite admire." Elara shuddered, recognizing the prince was using her as a pawn in a power game far beyond her comprehension. She was leaving the light of the feast for the terrifying intimacy of the king's lair. In the serpent's lair, Alaric Thorn's chambers were less a bedroom and more a fortified command center, perched high in the citadel's tallest tower. The walls were lined with dark wood and weaponry, and a massive four-poster bed stood like an altar in the center. Captain Rook deposited Elara inside and immediately sealed the heavy, iron-clad door. "Stay here, Elara," Rook said, his amber eyes showing a sliver of concern. "Do not move. Do not touch anything. The king's temper." He trailed off, the warning unnecessary. Rook had known Elara's mother, Lydia Vance, before her pack's absorption, and he carried a quiet, protective duty toward the girl. "Captain," Elara whispered, her voice trembling. "What is happening? Why did he call me by my name?" Rook sighed, running a weary hand through his close-cropped hair. He always knows, Ilara. He knows every scent, every whisper on his land. But tonight, the prince pushed him, and you, unintentionally, became the trigger. But why such anger? I am only an Omega, she pleaded. Rook looked her directly in the eye. You are an Omega with the Vance bloodline, Ilara, and your scent, though you suppress it well, is unique. It's subtle, yes, but to the Lycan, it's intoxicating. King Alaric is not merely an alpha. He is primal. You must be exceedingly careful. He then did something completely unexpected. Rook reached into his pocket and subtly pressed a small, cold object into her hand. It was a silver locket, tarnished and worn. This belonged to your mother, he murmured. Keep it close. It's a small bit of luck. Before Ilara could reply, Rook was gone, leaving her alone in the chilling silence of the king's personal prison. She clutched the locket, the cold silver, a tiny anchor in the suffocating luxury. The revelation of the hidden scent. It was nearly 2 hours later when Alaric finally arrived, the scent of expensive wine and suppressed aggression preceding him. He didn't stride in. He stalked, closing the door and securing the intricate locking mechanism with a heavy thud. Ilara was standing near the fireplace, attempting to appear small and unthreatening. Alaric didn't speak immediately. He stripped off his formal jacket, tossing it onto a chair, revealing the coiled, raw power beneath the fine silk of his shirt. He loosened his tie, his golden eyes burning with an emotion Ilara couldn't decipher. Was it rage, lust, or something terrifyingly proprietary? "Come here, Ilara," he ordered, his voice deep and rough. She obeyed, walking hesitantly across the expansive rug, her bare feet silent. She stopped a few feet from him, bowing her head submissively. Alaric reached out, his large hand capturing her chin and tilting her head up forcefully, forcing her to meet his gaze. She saw the true Lycan shining in his eyes. The animal was close to the surface. "You are clumsy, weak, and insolent," he growled, his breath hot against her skin. "You attract attention when you should be invisible. Do you know the penalty for defiance in my court?" Yes, your majesty," she stammered. "And yet," he continued, his thumb tracing the soft curve of her jaw, a feather-light touch that was somehow more threatening than a blow. "You stood there, breathing in his scent, letting your own bloom in response. That insolent pup, Valerius. You watched him, didn't you? It was an accident, I swear." "Silence!" he snapped, his voice hitting the high register of pure command. He leaned down, burying his face in the sensitive juncture of her neck and shoulder. He took a long, deep inhale, his body trembling slightly with the effort of control. His grip tightened on her chin. "You lie through your teeth," he muttered, his lips brushing her skin. "I can smell the truth. You try to mask it with that miserable grey dress and that weak tea of a scent. But I am the Lycan King. I smell the silver essence beneath the lilac." Ilara's breath hitched in a silent scream. The silver essence. It was a mythic scent, rumored to only belong to Omegas descended from the ancient, true lunar line. A line believed to grant an Omega not just fertility, but an almost supernatural balancing power to the most volatile alpha. A power that could tame a Lycan or destroy him. "You are mine, Ilara Vance," Alaric declared, pulling back just enough for her to see the triumph and the utter madness in his eyes. "You have been, since the moment you stepped onto my land. That scent is my destiny, and I will break any man who dares to even glance at what is mine. Valerius thinks this is a game of political rivalry. I will show him what happens when he trespasses on the king's mate." "Mate?" Ilara whispered, utterly horrified. She was not a Luna. She was not a mate. She was a servant, and he was threatening her with ownership. "Not yet," Alaric said, smiling a slow, predatory smile that was chilling to the bone. "But soon you will learn obedience, Omega, and I will teach you the meaning of looking only at the king." He released her chin, his eyes blazing gold. "I have a treaty to discuss with Valerius. I leave you here, knowing that if you step 1 foot outside this room, the walls themselves will inform me. You are guarded, Ilara, by my most trusted alpha, and by the fear of your own future." He turned abruptly and left, slamming the door shut. Ilara sank to the floor, clutching the locket, the revelation of the silver essence a devastating burden. Her insignificant life had just become the central, terrifying conflict of the Lycan world. The guarded prisoner, Ilara spent the next 3 days confined within King Alaric's opulent, suffocating quarters. She was fed the finest meals by silent Omegas, and Captain Rook personally delivered fresh clothing and bath salts, all signs of her sudden, unwanted elevation from anonymous servant to coveted possession. Yet, she was a prisoner. The doors were secured, the massive windows overlooked a sheer cliff face, and the subtle scent of Rook's presence lingered just outside the chamber, a constant reminder of the king's vigilance. Her mind reeled with Alaric's revelation, the silver essence. Her mother, Lydia, had told her nothing of this ancient bloodline. Ilara had spent her life deliberately suppressing her scent, convinced that invisibility was her only defense against the brutal alpha hierarchy. Now, her hidden nature had been unmasked by the most dangerous creature in the northern packs. She examined the tarnished silver locket Rook had given her. It was cold to the touch, simple, and bore a single faint engraving, a twisted, stylized knot, a symbol of protection Ilara vaguely recognized from her childhood. Her forced isolation was a strategy. Alaric was allowing the court to speculate, to fear, and to understand the gravity of his claim without interference. He was using her silence to amplify his power. The king's negotiation. Meanwhile, the political tension in the citadel was suffocating. Prince Tristan Valerius, far from leaving after the public display, had decided to dig in. He knew the king's fixation on Ilara was a weakness, a chink in the Lycan's otherwise impenetrable armor of control. Alaric summoned Tristan to his private study, a room devoid of luxury, emphasizing function and raw power. "You show a remarkable lack of survival instinct, Valerius," Alaric said, standing by a massive oak desk, 2 crystal glasses of amber liquor waiting. He offered one to Tristan, who took it with an unnervingly relaxed air. "And you show a remarkable lapse in judgment, Thorn," Tristan countered, sipping the liquor slowly. "A public display of uncontrolled rage over a low-ranking Omega? It suggests instability. The other packs will notice." "They will notice that what is mine is untouchable," Alaric corrected, his voice dangerously low. "The servant Ilara is of no consequence to our current treaty negotiations, which is why I suggest we proceed immediately. We both know the Crimson Moon Pack needs access to the northern trade routes." Tristan chuckled, a sound that grated on Alaric's already frayed nerves. "Oh, she is entirely consequential, Alaric. You just confirmed she is not merely an Omega. She is a tool, a prize, and apparently your deepest, darkest secret." Tristan placed his glass down, leaning forward conspiratorially. "The silver essence, Alaric. You think I didn't recognize the tension in the air? The moment your Lycan recognized that ancient scent? Legends say that only an alpha of true, undisputed Lycan blood can successfully claim a silver essence Omega, and such a mating grants the alpha not only unparalleled strength, but the right of eternal reign. An uncontested bloodline for centuries. Alaric's golden eyes flashed, confirming Tristan's suspicion. He was furious that the secret was known. "The legends are folk tales," Alaric scoffed, though his scent spiked with anxiety. "Are they?" Tristan smiled cruelly. "Then why the brutal claim? Why the imprisonment? If she's just an ordinary Omega, hand her over to me, a conciliatory gesture to smooth our treaty. I'll take her south, where she can forget the harsh life of a servant. If she's not the silver essence, you have nothing to lose." Alaric stared at Tristan, his teeth grinding. The offer was a direct challenge to his authority and his sanity. If he released Elara, he'd lost the claim to the essence and risked empowering a rival. If he kept her, he confirmed the rumors of the essence and cemented his reputation as a crazed tyrant holding a delicate Omega against her will. "You leave my citadel in the morning, Valerius," Alaric finally decided, his voice steel. "And you do not mention Elara Vance's name again. The treaty is suspended until I decide your pack has learned the meaning of respect." Tristan stood, bowing with mocking reverence. "As you command, my king. But understand this. I don't need a treaty with the North if I have the legitimacy that comes with freeing the Silver Essence Omega from a desperate, aging king." A desperate plea and a twist of loyalty. That evening, Elara was attempting to mend a tear in her drab servant dress, a habit of frugality ingrained since childhood, when the heavy door to the chamber clicked open. It wasn't Alaric, but Captain Rook. He looked haggard, his usually composed scent laced with stress and conflict. "The king is occupied in the library, Elara," Rook whispered, closing the door softly. "He has been in a furious debate with Prince Valerius. You must listen carefully. You are in extreme danger." Elara rushed to him. "Rook, what is the silver essence? Why does he want me?" "It's as Tristan suspects," Rook confirmed gravely. "It's the Lycan's weakness. It grants stability and lineage. Alaric, for all his power, fears the constant challenges to his throne. You are his key to undisputed dominance. He won't let you go." Elara looked down at the locket. "My mother gave me nothing. She left me here." "She didn't leave you," Rook insisted, his voice heavy with emotion. "She protected you. Your mother was not an Omega servant. She was Lady Lyra Vance, a prominent diplomat and the last known carrier of the pure silver essence lineage. She was forced into an oath to the previous king, who concealed her identity to protect her and the bloodline from being exploited." Elara gasped, stumbling back. Her whole life had been a lie of calculated obscurity. "When your mother died," Rook continued, his eyes meeting hers, "Alaric discovered the truth. He absorbed your pack and buried you in servitude, hoping to keep the essence hidden until he was ready to claim you." "But why are you telling me this?" Elara asked, confused by his betrayal of the king. Rook pulled a piece of parchment from his inner pocket. "Because I, Elara, also owe a debt to the former king and to your mother. And because I know that mating with Alaric would break you, the Lycan is too powerful, too volatile for an essence that seeks balance. He will devour your spirit." "What is this?" she asked, looking at the scroll. "A formal request for clemency from the Southern Pax," Rook revealed. "It's a fake, generated by Valerius's agents and authenticated by my own seal. It states that the Omega servant Elara Vance must be presented to the Southern Court for questioning regarding a border incident. Alaric will never allow it." "He is currently distracted," Rook whispered, his intensity growing. "The courier is ready at the eastern gate. If I escort you out now, under the guise of transferring you to the dungeons for inquiry before handing you over, we have a chance. You must leave. You must go to Prince Tristan. Tristan? But he only wants to use me against Alaric. Yes, but Tristan is politically ambitious, not fundamentally cruel, Rook argued desperately. He wants to legitimize his claim. Alaric wants to possess and hide you. With Valerius, you may have influence. With Alaric, you have only a gilded cage. Rook extended his hand. This is your chance. We move now, or you remain the Lycan King's puppet for eternity. Do you trust me, Elara Vance? Elara looked from the captain's earnest, worried face to the locket in her hand, remembering her mother's hidden strength. She knew the weight of the silver essence now. She had to flee to survive. Yes, Captain, she said, her voice steady for the first time since the feast. Let's go. Escape through the shadows. Captain Elias Rook moved with the silent, practiced efficiency of a man who knew the Citadel's blueprints better than his own memory. He led Elara through the service corridors, a labyrinth of damp stone and stale air, beneath the shimmering marble halls. The air was colder down here, the residual sense of the feast giving way to the earthy, metallic tang of deep rock and ancient fear. Rook carried the forged clemency request in his hand, his alpha scent carefully controlled to project a calm authority, masking the frantic thrum of his anxiety. We must maintain speed, Rook murmured, guiding Elara around a blind corner. The king has many eyes, Elara, not all of them human. Elara followed, clutching the silver locket. The drab servant dress was actually a blessing now, allowing her to blend into the shadows. Her Omega training to suppress her scent was working overtime, the fear driving her to a level of control she hadn't known she possessed. She had to survive long enough to understand her inheritance, and, more importantly, long enough to evade Alaric's devastating ownership. They reached the eastern gate, a secluded access point used primarily for supply deliveries, and, tonight, for clandestine departures. A small, sturdy carriage, driven by a quiet, cloaked man who smelled faintly of salt and the south, a known agent of Tristan Valerius, waited just outside the perimeter. Rook pushed Elara toward the carriage. Go. He will take you directly to Prince Valerius's temporary estate, a fortified hunting lodge 3 hours south of here. You will be safe there for a time. Elara turned, her emerald eyes filled with gratitude and worry. Rook, you can't stay. He will kill you. Rook smiled, a flicker of genuine warmth that cracked his professional shell. I owe a duty, Elara. To my king, yes, but first, to the lineage he swore to protect. And besides, he added, pulling a small, discreet dagger from his sleeve, I have to delay him. Go now. Elara didn't hesitate. She threw herself into the carriage. As the driver cracked the whip and the carriage lurched forward, gaining speed on the gravel road, Elara saw Rook turn and jog back toward the citadel, melting into the pre-dawn shadows. The Lycan Awakens' Alaric Thorn was not asleep. He was in his library, reviewing ancient Lycan texts on succession, trying to find a loophole in the legend of the silver essence that would allow him to claim Elara without the political constraints. His Lycan senses, however, were not concerned with ancient script. They were fixed on the chamber above. He had trained his Lycan to register the distinct scent signature of every Omega and Alpha in his inner circle. And one scent, faint but persistent, was missing entirely. Elara's. He had expected her to be afraid, restless, maybe even crying, but the total absence was deafening. Alaric slammed the heavy book shut. The sound was flat and final. He didn't move toward the door. He simply called. A mental command, a pure Lycan pulse that bypassed walls and doors, designed to summon the nearest Alpha instantly. Rook! Report! Silence. Not the absence of an answer, but the absence of the Alpha's mind in the network. A black hole where loyalty should be. The king rose, his Lycan taking over in a dizzying flash of gold. His human control was gone. He moved as a primal force, shattering the library door off its hinges with a single, furious shove. He raced through the corridors, the citadel shaking under his powerful strides. He reached his personal chamber, still locked from the outside. He ripped the iron door from its frame like peeling paper. The chamber was empty. The scent was gone, scrubbed away by the frantic activity of a hurried escape. Only a faint, residual trace of pine and rook's scent lingered, a scent of conflict, finality, and betrayal. Alaric didn't roar. His rage was a cold, pure thing, a terrifying power surge that manifested as absolute stillness. He stood in the center of the room, his golden eyes blazing with lethal realization. Rook. The only one trusted enough to guard her. The betrayal cut deeper than any dagger. He focused his senses, sweeping the perimeter. The scent trail was old, already fading in the cool night air, but unmistakably hers, overlaid with the rough scent of a low-grade southern driver. The Eastern Gate. The Lycan King raised his head. The resulting sound was not a growl, but a powerful, resonating howl of claim and retribution. It was a sound that reached every corner of the citadel and beyond, confirming the rumors and declaring war on the world that dared to touch his Omega. The interrogation 5 minutes later, Alaric stood over the trembling form of Lady Beatrice Vance, Ilara's ambitious cousin, whom he had found cowering near the high table. "Where is she going?" Alaric demanded, his voice a low, terrifying vibration that cracked the nearby marble column. I don't know, Your Majesty," Beatrice stammered, covering her face. "I swear I only overheard Lord Caspar Vane mention the Southern Prince's movements. Something about a lodge near the border." Alaric grabbed the Beta Lord Caspar Vane, who was attempting to slip away in the chaos, lifting him clean off the ground by his throat. "Valerius!" Alaric snarled. "He took her, and Rook helped him." "It was a forgery, Your Majesty," Caspar choked out, his eyes wide with terror. "A signed decree from Tristan, requesting the servant for a spurious border inquiry. Rook, he authenticated it. He must have known it was fake." Alaric dropped Caspar, who collapsed in a heap, gasping for air. The king understood the brilliance and the devastating simplicity of the betrayal. Rook hadn't just aided an escape. He had created a diplomatic incident, using official channels to cloak Ilara's flight. Alaric didn't waste another moment on anger. He shifted partially, his muscles bulging, his canines lengthening, his Lycan form barely contained beneath his skin. "Send a message to every pack within a 500-mile radius," Alaric commanded the nearest trembling Alpha. "King Alaric Thorn is hunting a thief and a traitor. Tristan Valerius has stolen what is rightfully mine. Tell them I want both the servant and the traitor Rook. And tell Valerius, the next time I see Ilara look at him, he will be dead." He didn't wait for confirmation. He threw himself out the main doors, shifting fully in mid-air. A massive, obsidian-furred Lycan hit the ground running, a terrifying blur of muscle and fury, following the faint scent of lilac and deceit, chasing his stolen destiny. Ilara's journey, the locket's secret. The carriage ride was a blur of fear and exhaustion. Ilara stared out the back window, terrified of seeing the giant black form of the Lycan King in pursuit. She turned her attention to the locket. It had to be more than just a piece of her mother's jewelry. If Rook had risked everything for her, the locket was her only clue. She fiddled with the stylized knot engraving on the front. It wasn't just a design. It was a complex series of intertwined lines. Pressing the center of the knot, she felt a subtle click. The locket sprang open. Inside, it contained no picture, but a tiny, tightly rolled piece of parchment, protected by a thin layer of waxed cloth. Elara unrolled it carefully, her hands shaking. The script was ancient Lycan, elegant and powerful, recognizable from the Citadel's old texts, written by her mother, Lady Lyra Vance. The message was short, cryptic, and devastating. Elara, my child, forgive my silence. The essence must be hidden until the time is right. The Lycan will claim you, but he must be challenged by two. Never submit fully. Your strength is not in taming the king, but in binding the lines. The secret lies not in the silver, but in the shadow wolf. The shadow wolf, a mythic alpha figure, even rarer than the Lycan. A wolf capable of blending into pure darkness and wielding non-physical power. Elara had always dismissed the stories as nursery tales. But if the king sought the essence for eternal reign, and her mother warned her of the shadow wolf, the conflict was not simply between Alaric and Tristan. It was an ancient war of bloodlines, and Elara, the insignificant servant, was the key. She looked at the road ahead, where the promise of safety with Prince Tristan lay, realizing she was running not from the conflict, but directly into the heart of a prophecy. I will continue the story, focusing on Elara's reception by Prince Tristan, the true nature of his ambition, and King Alaric's aggressive move to reclaim her. The carriage arrived at the fortified hunting lodge of Prince Tristan Valerius, just as the first sliver of grey light touched the horizon. The lodge, though rustic compared to the obsidian citadel, was built for defence, nestled deep in the rugged southern territory, where the air smelled sharper and wilder. Elara was escorted immediately inside. Tristan met her in the main common room, which was filled with the low-key, professional tension of heavily armed alpha guards. Tristan was exactly as she remembered, strikingly handsome, radiating confidence. But now, stripped of the feast's formality, his ambition was palpable. He offered her a warm cloak and a steaming cup of herbal tea. "Welcome, Elara Vance," Tristan said, his voice smooth and welcoming. He scented her deeply, but controlled his alpha instinct, respecting the volatile political situation. "You must be terrified. Rook is a brave, foolish man, and I am grateful for his aid." Elara clutched the locket beneath the cloak. She remembered her mother's words. He must be challenged by two. "Prince Valerius," Elara said, her voice strained but firm, "I appreciate your protection, but let us be honest. You didn't orchestrate this escape for my safety. You did it to challenge King Alaric." Tristan smiled, a genuine flicker of admiration in his eyes. "Astute. I am ambitious, Elara. Alaric Thorn is a tyrant. He ruled by fear, and his claim over you, over the silver essence, would make him untouchable for centuries. I seek to prevent that. The northern packs are suffocating under his reign. They need a rival, a balance, and you, Elara, are that balance. You want to use me as a political chess piece," she stated simply. "Precisely," Tristan admitted, walking toward the fire. "But hear me out. Alaric will claim you by force, hide you away, and breed the next Lycan line to solidify his tyranny. With me, the claim is public, political, and conditional. You will be the lunar consort of the southern court, yes, but you will hold influence. You will be seen, Elara, not hidden." He turned back to her, his gaze intense. "I don't need to control you. I need to prove I am strong enough to protect you from him. I need your public affirmation, however reluctant, to legitimize my challenge to the Lycan. I offer you a difficult life, perhaps, but one with the chance for influence, not servitude. Ilara considered his words. Alaric promised ownership and a gilded cage. Tristan offered a political partnership with risk. She remembered the shadow wolf. Could Tristan be the second challenger her mother mentioned? I will not be claimed by either of you until I understand the extent of my own power, Ilara declared, stepping away from the fire. Until then, I am a protected guest, Prince, not a political tool. Tristan nodded slowly, a thoughtful expression on his face. A truce, then. I will guard you with everything I have. But know this, Ilara. Alaric Thorn is hunting, and he will not stop until he has spilled blood. Alaric's messenger. Tristan's premonition proved tragically accurate. Less than 3 hours later, the lodge's defenses were breached, not by Alaric himself, but by a chilling messenger. A lone beta, wearing the uniform of the Obsidian Guard, but badly mauled and staggering, stumbled into the clearing outside the lodge's perimeter. Tristan's guards rushed to secure him. The beta, Marcus Stone, was bleeding heavily from multiple deep claw wounds, though none were immediately fatal. He carried a small, heavy object wrapped in dark cloth. Tristan approached the injured man cautiously. "Marcus, what happened?" Marcus struggled to speak, his eyes wide with horror and pain. "Prince Valerius, the king. He is monstrous. He is not human. I was ordered to deliver this." Marcus carefully unwrapped the object and pushed it across the snowy ground toward Tristan. It was Captain Elias Rook's ornate alpha pauldron, the ceremonial shoulder-piece marking his status as the king's captain, blooded, crushed, and bearing deep, parallel gouges from Lycan claws. Wrapped around the pauldron was a note written in Alaric's bold, angular script, a lesson in loyalty. What belongs to the king remains on his soil. Return my Omega, Valerius, or I will not send the rest of your men back in pieces. I will bring them back as chattel. The message was clear. Rook was either dead or captured and being tortured. Alaric had exacted immediate, brutal retribution. The challenge was now personal. "Rook," Ilara gasped, covering her mouth, the guilt over his sacrifice overwhelming her. Tristan's jaw tightened. He didn't just kill the traitor. He sent a political message. Disregard for the chain of command. Disregard for human life. He wants to terrify me into submission. He looked at Ilara, whose face was pale with grief and fear. "Alaric is not coming for a political discussion, Ilara. He is coming for a blood price. We need to move you now, deeper south." The king's primal bargain. As Tristan ordered his men to prepare a deeper sanctuary, Alaric was closing the distance. He was moving in his Lycan form, tearing through the northern forests at a relentless, terrifying pace. He paused only once at the small, snow-covered clearing where he had dealt with his traitorous captain. Rook, severely wounded but intentionally left alive, had been taken back to the Citadel's dungeons for further interrogation. Alaric needed the captain to confirm who else was involved. Standing amidst the shattered trees, Alaric addressed his own Lycan spirit, which was clamoring for the scent of Ilara, his stolen mate. "Control the human mind," commanded. "She is essential. Do not destroy what you seek to possess." She looked at him. The Lycan growled back, a constant, vicious whisper. She felt the touch of another alpha on my territory. Unacceptable. The conflict between the Lycan's primal possessiveness and the king's strategic need was tearing him apart. He knew that forcing the Silver Essence Omega would break her power and potentially his reign. He needed her to choose, however small the choice, to submit. Alaric decided on a desperate strategy, one that would appeal directly to Ilara's sense of duty, even if she hated him. He reverted to his human form, leaning against a massive oak, his chest heaving, sweat turning instantly to ice on his skin. He pulled out a small, secured satellite phone, a relic from his own intelligence operations, and punched in a highly encrypted number. He called Lady Beatrice Vance. Beatrice, still trembling from her close call, answered instantly. "Listen closely, Beatrice." Alaric's voice was sharp, cutting through the line. "I am activating Protocol Lyra. Do not fail me. You will go to the archives, find the sealed documentation regarding the Pact of Whispering Ashes, the ancient agreement between the Lycan and the Essence line." Beatrice, confused but terrified into obedience, stammered, "But Your Majesty, that pact is treasonous. It suggests a shared sovereignty." "Do it!" Alaric roared, the sound crackling the line. "And when you find it, you will deliver a message to Ilara Vance through Tristan Valerius's southern channels. Tell her, if she returns voluntarily and chooses to uphold the pact, I will grant Captain Rook clemency, exile him far away, and never touch her without her expressed consent." He paused, a chilling, desperate calm descending. "But if she refuses, I will bring the northern packs down upon Valerius's land, and Rook will die slowly, every day until I have her back. Give her the choice, Beatrice. Let the Omega servant decide if her freedom is worth the captain's blood." Alaric hung up. It was a brutal bargain, trading one life for his obsession. He knew Ilara, the gentle Omega, would be forced to choose between her only protector and her own terrifying future. The chase was over. The negotiation had begun. The Lycan's ultimatum. The package arrived just before nightfall. A heavily sealed diplomatic courier delivered an envelope containing the ancient, copied document of the Pact of Whispering Ashes, alongside Alaric's chilling ultimatum. Tristan Valerius read the terms aloud in Ilara's presence, his face a mask of fury. If you return voluntarily, he grants Rook clemency and promises never to touch you without consent. If you refuse, Rook dies. "This is emotional blackmail," Tristan snarled, pacing the room. "He knows you are compassionate. He is manipulating your guilt over Rook's sacrifice." Ilara ignored him, her gaze fixed on the pact. It wasn't merely a treaty, it was a law. It stated that the Silver Essence Omega, referred to as the Balancer, could never be a slave, but must be recognized as a co-sovereign to the Lycan King, holding veto power over the lineage if the king became a tyrant. The Lycan was required to bind the essence, but only through genuine recognized consent. She finally understood her mother's cryptic warning. "The Lycan will claim you, but he must be challenged by two. Never submit fully. Your strength is not in taming the king, but in binding the lines. The secret lies not in the silver, but in the shadow wolf." If she used the pact, she was acknowledging Alaric's right to claim the essence, but she would gain political power, the chance to influence the realm. If she stayed with Tristan, she saved herself but condemned Rook to a slow death, allowing Alaric to prove his absolute control. "Prince Valerius," Ilara said, clutching the locket, the knot carving feeling like a key. "Rook saved my life. His sacrifice was meant to buy me time to read this. The pact is my only weapon." Tristan ran a frustrated hand through his hair. "You cannot trust his promise. Once you step back into his citadel, you are dead, or worse, forced." "I have to take the chance," Ilara whispered, the decision an agonizing weight on her soul. "If I return under the terms of the pact, I force him to acknowledge my sovereignty publicly. He cannot destroy a lunar consort with veto power without risking a full-scale revolt. And I need to know why my mother mentioned the Shadow Wolf. She looked at Tristan, her resolve solidifying. Tell Alaric I accept his terms. I will return to the Citadel at dawn, but only if the exchange is public, with witnesses from neutral pacts. The terms must be signed, officially reinstating the pact. Rook's freedom first. Tristan stared at her, seeing not the timid servant, but the potential queen she was destined to be. You are more dangerous than Alaric knows, Alara Vance. Perhaps, she replied, gripping the locket. Now send the message. The return. The return was swift. Ilara, flanked by Tristan and a neutral delegation from the Golden Paw Pack, arrived at the gates of the Obsidian Citadel just as the sun rose. The scene was tense, silent, and witnessed by every Alpha, Beta, and Omega who dared to watch from the ramparts. King Alaric Thorn stood alone in the courtyard, wearing simple fighting leathers, his presence overwhelming. He held the official pardon document in his hand. Ilara stepped forward, her small figure radiating an unnatural calm. Tristan stayed close, ready to intervene, his scent radiating challenge. Ilara, Alaric greeted her, his voice devoid of emotion. You chose loyalty over self-preservation, a rare quality. I chose the pact, Your Majesty, Ilara corrected him, her eyes locking onto his golden gaze. And the life of Captain Elias Rook. Where is he? Alaric raised his hand. A side door opened, and 2 guards supported Rook, who was pale, weak, and bleeding from several deep wounds, but alive. He looked at Ilara, a flicker of pride and relief in his eyes. The pardon is signed, Alaric declared, tossing the parchment to the Golden Paw delegates. Rook is free. He will be exiled south, effective immediately. Now the second term, the Pact of Whispering Ashes, is reinstated. You acknowledge me as your Lycan King, and I acknowledge you as the balancer and co-sovereign lunar consort. Ilara stood tall. I accept the pact, but I demand to know why my mother, Lady Lyra Vance, wrote of the Shadow Wolf. Alaric's composure finally fractured. His eyes flickered with raw vulnerability, a terrifying moment of weakness the court had never witnessed. He stepped closer, leaning in until only Ilara could hear his desperate whisper. The Shadow Wolf is not a person, Ilara. It is the curse. Ilara frowned. The curse? I am not the Lycan King, Alaric confessed, his voice ragged. I am only his vessel. The true Lycan King is an entity of pure power, trapped inside my mind since the day I inherited the throne. He is the Shadow Wolf, primal, unstable, and he hates your silver essence. Your mother's lineage was meant to tame the beast, to bind the 2 lines, Lycan and essence, before the Shadow Wolf could destroy the vessel, which is me. He looked at her, his golden eyes pleading. The growl you heard. Don't look at him again. That was the Shadow Wolf speaking through me, warning you away from Tristan, because Tristan Valorius is the only other Alpha strong enough to break my control and steal the essence from the Shadow Wolf's grasp. He is the catalyst, not the rival. Ilara gasped, the ultimate twist hitting her like physical force. Alaric was not her abuser. He was a victim, fighting an internal, destructive war to protect her essence and his kingdom. His obsession was survival. Alaric straightened, his voice returning to the king's roar for the public. The terms are met. You are now bound to the Obsidian Court, lunar consort Ilara Vance. You will look only at me, and we will begin the process of binding the lines before the Shadow Wolf claims us both. As the delegates signed the pact and the court erupted in shocked whispers, Ilara realized her destiny. She wasn't meant to run. She was meant to fight the ancient entity trapped within the man who loved her with a terrifying, fractured power. She finally saw the depth of Alaric's pain and the danger of the silver essence. She had a choice to make: tame the king or unleash the wolf. The heir just left the Obsidian Citadel, didn't it? King Alaric Thorn, the ruthless Lycan ruler, isn't just possessive, he's possessed. Ilara Vance, the meek Omega servant, is now the lunar consort, armed with an ancient pact and facing a terrifying truth. Her king is merely a cage for the destructive shadow wolf. Tristan Valerius, the charming rival, was simply the distraction in a war fought within Alaric's mind. Can Ilara's silver essence truly bind a fractured Lycan king? Or will the shadow wolf succeed in destroying them both? The true romance lies not in taming the beast, but in surviving the war. If this story of prophecy, betrayal, and possessed kings left you breathless, hit that like button now. Share this video with a friend who loves high-stakes drama, and subscribe to the channel to ensure you don't miss the next chapter of the Lycan King's struggle and the Omega's rise to power. Let me know in the comments, do you think Alaric can be saved?